States have seceded.
The United States Army ramps up activity.
The White House issued warnings to the Western forces as well as the Florida Alliance.
The three-term president assures the uprising will be dealt with swiftly.
Citizens of America, the so-called Western forces of Texas and California have suffered a very great defeat at the hands of the United States military.
Mr. President, do you regret the use of airstrikes against American citizens?
We're moving to D.C. today.
We need to go down there.
They shoot journalists on sight in the Capitol. Every instinct in me says this is death.
Bloody.
Every time I survived the war zone, I thought I was sending a warning home. Don't do this. But here we are.
There's some kind of misunderstanding here. What? Well, you're American, okay? Okay. What kind of American are you?
Aloha. This is Trinidad the Islandman, your Islandman, coming to you live once again from beautiful Hawaii here on the island of Oahu, bringing you, yes you, the best movie reviews on the entire island of Oahu. And yes, this is Trinidad the Islandman, your Islandman. And last night, I had the opportunity to see an advanced screening of Alex Garland's new movie, Civil War. Now, this has nothing to do with the Marvel comic or the MCU movie, Civil War, unfortunately. But I digress. Remember our rating scale? Shock a thumbs up, it's good to see, I recommend it. Shock a thumbs down, it's junk, I don't recommend it. And for Alex Garland's new movie, Civil War, talking about a possible, potential, near futuristic movie where the United States is once again plunged into a civil war. States secede from the Union of the United States of America and basically wage war on fellow Americans. And the country is left broken and shattered while these events are going on. It is overall a shock a thumbs down. Let's just say I don't know a lot about Alex Garland and his directing chops or his writing chops. I did like his previous movie that he wrote, 28 Days Later. That was fantastic. Ex Machina was fantastic, and both of those, along with Annihilation he wrote. Annihilation was flawed, but it was based on a book, I believe. But I think he did write the screenplay and adapt it. But again, like I said, it was flawed, so I didn't like that one as much. But I did like Ex Machina, and of course 28 Days Later was magnifique. Yet, you know, he didn't direct 28 Days Later. He did do Ex Machina, I think. And I know, I'm pretty sure he did Annihilation. But those were sci-fi movies, firmly grounded in sci-fi kind of movies. You know, Crazy Virus, you know, androids, robots, aliens. But now he turns his focus on everyday life. And unfortunately, whether you want to admit it or not, it has become everyday life. You know, especially in this charged political time that we live in, where you have, you know, the GOP and the Democrats, you know, at each other's throats, and government installed, and you know, and what was it? A most recent poll asking Americans if they would support violence in their political system. The majority said no, but a frighteningly enough number said that they would support violence and also rule breaking. pretty much spells what people are fearing of a new Trump rebirth and second term. I would like to stay more optimistic than that, but, it could happen. And, I believe that this is the movie that would kind of say, well, if it does happen, this is what most likely could possibly occur. Basically, in this movie, it's set somewhere in the near future. The president, due to the president's extreme views, I believe, like 19 states, I think it says in the film, have separated from America, basically succeeded, and these secessionists wage war to overthrow the government or the current president, who seems very resistant to inclusiveness, pushing a particular doctrine. Unfortunately, we have kind of sort of seen somewhat recently in our political system. The brunt of which resistance is led by Texas and California, called the Western Front Alliance. Florida, oddly enough, is in that category too, as being an ally of those two main secessions states. I believe like Colorado, they say has, but it's, basically it's mainly California and Texas, which again, seem like unlikely bedmates there for allies against the government, but who knows? I guess, each one has their own, uniqueness to be separate in thought. And I guess, united against a common foe, they push against it. So what we see is a group of, we follow along a group of journalists led by Kristen Dunst. Wagner Morrow is her friend and fellow journalist. Basically, Kristen Dunst is the photojournalist, a young up-and-coming photojournalist wannabe, child, teenager, accompanies them on their journey, I believe, from Florida up through the southern states, which is America, which is basically the ones causing the trouble, along with the president, to Washington, where it is said that the Western Front is closing in on the president to dethrone him. And so we see the horrors and the atrocities going through much of the South, up through like Virginia and West Virginia, etc., of small pockets of resistance in colleges fighting against American forces, which the president has turned on the fellow people and nation, people of the United States, or the former United States, I guess. And violence has pretty much erupted. There's a lot of bloodshed, a lot of violence that you see in this movie. Both what you would expect to see, such as lynchings, hanging dead bodies, etc. And to that I salute Alex Garland's attempt at making this quasi-realistic, as if you've seen footage from news of, say, even the Gaza war currently, other past wars in Iraq, people strung up, the enemy strung up, basically made an example of, death squads, etc., taking out the people that, the current forces in power are against. And he does that unabashedly And it is an interesting, if not jarring, sight to see Americans fighting Americans, which unfortunately has its roots in our history, although some people don't like to be reminded of it. What more can I say about this film? The journalists seem very unprofessional. I'm not sure, if it was mentioned or I missed it in this movie about how long this war had been going on, but it seemed like at least a couple of years, at least a term of, the 4 years of a particular president who's in office currently in this movie, and their attempts to overthrow him, if not longer. I'm not sure. But it seems, it pretty much has engulfed all of the United States, but the main front of which is still in the southern sections. And, very much like the past Civil War. I would compare this movie, it has the feel in those battleground states of, say, like the original 80s Red Dawn is how I felt with it, and you're following this. However, it lacks that passion, it lacks the patriotism of that. Now, of course, each side, whether they support this corrupt president in the movie or not, believes that their side is right, and thus they feel that they're the patriots doing the right thing. But each one is essentially taking it to the extreme measures, unfortunately, which is often the case in the fog of war that takes place. You can look and see that right now with the Israelis, repeated bombing Palestinian civilians in Gaza currently, whereas maybe there was a justified force to be used against Hamas. However, it's easily gone out of hand very, very quickly, which is the feel of that you have in this movie. The unfortunate thing about this movie, and the reasons for the Shaka thumbs down, despite some very nice cinematography, you have like a downed helicopter in the backdrop of this mall where there's a abandoned JCPenney's, yes, pretty much all closed up across the United States, is a fitting thing in this wreckage of helicopters and battles scarred parts of the United States. Very fitting indeed. And I think that JCPenney's kind of, this was America kind of a feeling really shows through at moments like that, along with, in the skirmishes, say that college battle of people dying, and you see, what takes place, in the horrors of war, etc. that takes place in these kind of movies and real life events that they depict. However, Alex Garland's main flaw in this is that we follow these journalists, a group of 4 journalists mainly. For a brief moment it becomes 6, but mainly the 4, Kristen Dunst's group. And they are completely unlikable. And like I said, unprofessional. Each are, well, except for the young teenager who doesn't know any better, wanting to follow her, her idol, Kristen Dunst's photojournalist character, and wanting to become a photojournalist in herself. Basically, these are hardened journalists. They've become very cynical following this kind of a movie, kind of events throughout the world, through these various type of war-torn countries, and basically the weight that it has happened in their own neighborhood, the United States. weighs heavy on their soul. And they question the work that they've done. And you can get a little taste of that in Kirsten Dunst's couple of lines in the trailer that I've just shown you. But as jaded, but essentially these guys are too jaded. Why they're even on this job, it's hard to say that, oh, they're on this job because they care. They want to put out the news. It's like most of it seems like they're adrenaline junkies just trying to jump out there and get the perfect shot, just to, basically they're addicts trying to get their fix of, excitement is what it seems, but they're not brave enough to pick up the guns themselves and wage this war, hiding behind their press passes. Very much not the professionals that you would see. And you later see more professional reporters that have been entrenched in the Western forces, who maybe because they haven't had to face such atrocities, being protected and guarded, and definitely being around the Western forces, the winning side, might have turned a blind eye to some of these atrocities committed on both sides of the Civil War. However, just to see all this darkness in Kirsten Dunst's group, even with this newcomer, this young girl, who is extremely, extremely unlikable, that I was really, it's like, man, I really hope she gets shot or killed in this movie, because she needs to be out of this movie completely. But, she is a catalyst for this movie. This young, I want to say idealist, up-and-coming wannabe photojournalist, but, it just doesn't work for me. The character itself is too unlikable. This group is just too unlikable. There's one person out of the 4 members of this group that is, has his head on right. But unfortunately, he is the one that's killed. And the group doesn't listen to him, unfortunately. Which leads, unfortunately, to his death. This is marketed as a Kirsten Dunst movie and her husband Jesse Plemons movie. You see him in the trailer. He's only in this movie for that section of the trailer, basically, for like 5 minutes of the movie. And when he is on screen, he owns this movie. And it would have been more disturbing to see a movie from his point of view and follow him through this movie than it would be and more interesting than following these journalists with Kirsten Dunst through this movie, because that's where the power lies. And you can see it even in his question. Well, what, you say you're Americans, as he's about to kill these journalists. Well, what kind of Americans are you? Because there's some other journalists. Remember, I said there soon becomes 6. Well, it goes back to 4 really quickly, because in this section of the movie, which is unfortunately near the 3rd act, he basically kills these 2 journalists because they're foreign journalists and not American journalists. Although it's implied heavily that he was going to kill these other American journalists as well. But he was, he kind of did it quickly and without much thought. Whereas, against the foreigners, then maybe taking his time and being a little bit more caring in his getting rid of the American journalist. Who can say? But that's how it felt to me. But he was the most interesting person of this movie. Kirsten Dunst really hasn't headlined a movie in a long, long time. And she's not megastar material. It's great that she was given a shot. She does fine, but again, like I say, it's just the characters are written very, very unlikable. And this is the group you're following, and to see the tales of this divided America unfold is even more tragic than the tale Alex Garland is trying to tell when you don't really care about these people and they're leading you through, oh, what's going on in America and what's wrong with it because of this situation. Like I said, cinematography, there are some interesting shots in this. At the end, in the third act, is where all the action is. There's a storm on Washington, D.C. I've stood in the Lincoln Memorial. I've looked up at that giant statue of Lincoln, and to see that firefight takes place and to see that it's blown to smithereens during this Civil War battle as the Western forces storm, the White House area, did hit me a little bit in the heart. Seeing the nation's capital once again under siege and sections of it destroyed, is pretty powerful stuff. And I think that's what Alex Garland's movie is mainly trying to present, is the shock value of this, more so than a deep, enriching story. Just basically following and pandering to recent headlines of, red and blue states against one another, whereas currently it's politically could overspill into an actual civil war, depending on who's elected and their ideologies. So again, overall, a shock of thumbs down for Civil War. This is probably a really good movie to watch streaming at home. I'm sorry that I paid money to see this movie for this advanced screening. But, at least I get to warn you that it's not, it doesn't live up to a Red Dawn kind of movie potential. The 80s, I never saw the remake in the 2000s. But, it does, if you're on either side of the fence politically, as either a warning of what could happen and needs to be prevented, or as a, man, I really, this is the way we got to do things. You're probably going to be more interested in seeing this movie, which was the general feel of the audience, which was maybe, it was maybe almost halfway filled for this advanced screening. So there is some buzz around this movie, and again, in this politically charged moment in America that we live in, that alone is the buzz enough to maybe get butts in seats for this film. But for me, I'd say it's perfectly fine to skip it until you can watch it in the comfort of your own home streaming. But if you really want to see it, go ahead and go for it. But it wasn't my cup of tea. Shock a thumbs down, just because, although the story is of course interesting, as a Civil War in modern day America would be, the characters that were presented with to follow the story through and be told the story just aren't that appealing enough for this nearly 2-hour movie. All right, well, there you have it. Shock a thumbs down for Alex Garland's new movie, Civil War. Overall, see it, don't see it, wait till streaming. That's my recommendation. All right, mahalo and aloha.